Welcome to Crossing Face. I'm John Pinna, and today we have a very special guest, Ms. Francesca Albanese, who's the special rapporteur for the status of human rights in the occupied Palestine territories. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and Ramadan Kareem, everyone.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. It means a lot. So yeah, I'm fasting right now, although it's morning, so I'm okay right now. So, and it's not 2010 when the sun is up all the way till about 9:30, so we're good. But anyways, I know that we are short on time, so I wanted to make sure that we spoke a little bit about your work. Right now, Israel-Palestine is such a big issue in the news. There's a lot of narratives being thrown out, a lot of slogans being thrown around. And I wanted to kind of have you on to talk with specificity about some of the questions our listenership has thrown at us. But I think first, maybe we should just chat a little bit about, what's going on in your office right now, and what are the top priorities that you're pushing from, because you focus mostly on the legal perspective of how Israel is adhering to international law. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. Look, first of all, for the benefit of your audience, perhaps I should also tell a little bit more about my work, because talking about an office might be misleading. In the sense, I'm a volunteer. I serve voluntarily to the United Nations. So I do have an office made of volunteers from different universities and different parts of life, but this is really who we are, and shows also the commitment to this to correct this incredible injustice. However, I'm a former UN official and scholar who's been researching and writing extensively about the forced displacement of Palestinian refugees, of course, from a legal point of view, because I'm a lawyer. But I've been appointed in 2022 by the United Nations Human Rights Council to monitor and document and report to the United Nations on the violations of international law taking place in the occupied Palestinian territory, meaning the Gaza Strip, the West Bank and East Jerusalem, that Israel has maintained under an occupation which is unlawful under international law for 57 years. And it's unlawful because it has turned into a vehicle to annex by force land the little that remains to the Palestinians for the exercise of self-determination in the form of statehood, but also repression of basic rights and freedoms. I mean, Israel practices apartheid against the Palestinian people, and in the last 16 months has committed all sorts of crimes, more than before. War crimes has always been a reality for the Palestinians under occupation, and so crimes against humanity. But in the past 16 months, I've argued that Israel, together with others, of course, now the voices are many, Israel has committed acts of genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. And now it's very clear to me and to many that these genocidal acts are part and parcel of a long-held design of Israel for the land that was once historical Palestine, to create greater Israel in this land from the river to the sea without Palestinians, without non-Jewish, so without Christian, without Muslim, but without anyone who really does not correspond and support a Zionist idea of sovereignty, because Israel is becoming more and more repressive also against its own Jewish citizens, as long as they stand against the occupation, the apartheid that is enforced upon the Palestinians, etc. So over the past 3 years, I've issued 5 reports. I'm about to issue the 6th, talking of various aspects of the Israeli occupation, the way it infringes Palestinian self-determination and other rights. So this is what I do. But I would like to comment on something you said, like now that Israel-Palestine is big in the news. I don't think it's as big in the news as it should be. And it's often misrepresented in the news, despite the fact that for the past 16 months, finally, the world has remembered that Palestine exists and the Palestinians still exist. The point is that there is still a huge misunderstanding of what it is. Palestine is, as the Indian writer Arundhati Roy says, it's a wound. and it's a wound that bleeds injustice. Palestinians have been exposed to the injustice of settler colonialism for 100 years and counting. And also, they are not understood. They're not understood as a people. They are highly, highly, highly dehumanized. I would say primarily in Western audiences. I wouldn't say among Western people, because there are so many ordinary people in the West who for 100 years, for 16 months now have been protesting, taking the street, risking their own life. And this includes many Jewish people. Many Jewish people. And I have the privilege to work with many of these groups from the US to Europe and other places. But also, there is a huge level of dehumanization among the political leaders. And so Palestinians are not looked at as individuals, as people made of individuals, old and young, with their own passions, their own dreams, their ambitions, scientists, literate, scholars, or bakers, or painters, or doctors. No, they're just put into this category of the eternal enemy of Israel, and unfortunately, lately, those who have committed the worst crimes against the Jewish people on October 7, hence they need to be punished. So this is what the environment I'm operating in.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say it, because we deal at Muslims for Muslims a lot with dignity of human person, right? And so these are codified obviously in the UDHR, and so it becomes difficult to address issues when when you have such a systemic problem when it comes to the persecution of a people. I think the challenge here is that, like I said, it is in the news. There's a lot of slogans being thrown around. There's a lot of narratives, but how do you? So you're issuing out your sixth report. What's when it comes to the reports that you're issuing out and the assessments that you're doing, the information that you're getting out there, how do you gauge impact, and not just on a global scale, but impact to the people affected
Look, I think I've had
and the Palestinian side.
Yeah, look, I think that I've been preceded by incredible lawyers like Michael Link, Richard Falk, John Dugard. I think that while I've learned so much from them and I've stayed the course in the way I've used international law, where I've been different and as impactful as it could get is in bringing this the legal reading and the call for justice forward. I have been as impactful as it could be, in the sense I've reached out much beyond the UN system. I mean, I've shaken up the UN community to the point that I've attracted much venom. Think of the violent reactions and the attacks I've provoked from US ambassadors and politicians, Canadian ambassadors, French, German ambassadors, and of course Israel. But also think of how much, I think I've helped sensitize the public on questions like self-determination, settler colonialism, genocide. The point is that there is that much that a special rapporteur can do. Where are the others? And again, I often criticize the West, but frankly, I've not seen much in the rest of the world, in the sense, yes, there have been countries who have gone out of the way compared to the past, like in the past 30 years, like Malaysia, South Africa, Colombia. The point though, is that the world has not cut ties, economic, military, political, and diplomatic ties with Israel. The world is not looking at the Palestinians as human beings who are being genocided and therefore needs an immediate protection presence in their own countries. And frankly, also in the Arab region, because I live and I travel a lot across the region, And they work with many groups. There are countries like Tunisia where the question, or Algeria, where the question of Palestine is really deeply heartfelt. There are other places where the people themselves do not care. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily about the human rights individuals or institutions are out there. Amnesty International has done an incredible job in the past years denouncing apartheid and now denouncing genocide. But you know, these are things that should shock and should send shockwaves across the world, because if a genocide of this type can be committed under our eyes, where people are starved to death, where kids, children are frozen to death, 18,000 Palestinian children have been killed in the last 16 months in Gaza alone, without considering the thousands and thousands who had been killed before. How much has it changed? How much has it changed our life? I can tell you, mine has changed a lot.
Sure.
How much has it changed life of others? And this is why I'm saying this should be felt as a deeply, profoundly personal issues, and everyone should be made aware that it's not about complaining on the internet or putting a like here and there. We need to ask for accountability at the country level, but also mobilize more. And this mobilization is not taking place as it should yet.
Well, I think a lot of people, it becomes a reactionary thing. I know that when I was at the American Islamic Congress, and I was the director of government and international relations, we stayed away from the issue because, our narrative was everything that's needed to be said has been said, and someone needs to make a decision. That was because if you took a stance on Israel Palestine, that would become it would dominate who interacted with you and who didn't interact with you. And that was a board decision. I wasn't in charge of the organization. And so it was an interesting, we had to stay in like a neutral space. But I think, like you said, now that the issue and what's been going on has been heavily socialized. It's in the news. It's there. You can't ignore it. And the numbers are there now. Obviously, there's different camps and on either side of the narrative, but now we have this sort of really interesting sort of disruptive element, right? President Trump has said he wants to turn it into the Riviera, and of course, you know, that has to do with American alignment and also Trump's personal and interest and where he comes from. You know, if you only have a hammer, every problem needs to be solved with a hammer and a nail, right? And he's a real estate guy, so his solution comes from that background. But what's interesting, maybe you can make a comment on the Arab response. I mean, there was a meeting in Egypt with the Arab leaders, and they have pressed a response of what they think would be the most appropriate way to address the rebuilding of Gaza. What's your take on that response? Because it did. What Trump said did press a meeting with Arab leaders about Gaza, right? And they did meet in Egypt, and they do have a response. What's your take on that response?
The response is better than other responses,
yeah,
in the sense that it has important legal language, and for me, it's not a minor sign, because the question of Palestine, the resolution of the question of Palestine, of which Gaza is a component, we should make the effort not to talk about Gaza as separate from the West Bank or East Jerusalem, because eventually this is the territorial unity that remains to the Palestinians, and its fragmentation is part of the problem. There are two questions that for me remains critical after the Arab Summit. Is A, political capital. Are they keen to engage, or rather to disengage, with the countries, or re-engage in another way with the countries who have been contributing to the destruction of Gaza first? Are they ready to call the destruction of Gaza what it is? It's a genocide. It's a genocide. And are they ready to say, I think so from the statement, but there are also I don't know, there is also something like that puzzles me. But are Arab leaders keen to say the reconstruction of Gaza concerns the international community in one respect, paying reparations to the people of Gaza? Israel, the United States, and Germany, meaning the two countries who have most heavily armed Israel during this genocide, will need to pay reparations. And it's not about, triggering the generosity of people here and there, because look, there is no generosity in this world, including, and don't take me as an arrogant prick, because I'm not. I have a huge respect for all religions, including Muslim brothers and sisters. But in the Arab region, there are quite significant vultures that are looking at Gaza as yet another place to develop, to make business on. And this is repulsive for me.
Right.
So it's very important that the Arab people themselves check on their rulers and make sure that there is no further exploitation of the Palestinian people. I think that this is the majority. This is not the majority. There are a few states who are really that exploitative, and this is not the majority. But this is why I'm saying now the challenge is to keep on walking the talk. So there is a question of self-determination. There is a question of legal responsibility. Second, there is the question of reconstruction, and the decisions belong to the Palestinians. The Palestinians should be allowed to vote, and they can do that. They can determine themselves. They can reorganize themselves. This is not the first time that a people is left on its knees and asked to rebuild from the crumbles. The people in Palestine can do that, but they cannot do that while they are also being genocided. They cannot do that if the first obligation under international law is not met, meaning Israel must withdraw the troops, the settlements, and its control and exploitation of Palestinian natural resources. And I don't see any move out there. No one is really putting this on the table. And for me, this should be the first and most important issue.
I mean, on one hand, it's a sovereign area for the Palestinians, but then it's also controlled. So there's becomes this issue of like how do you enforce the territories right now? Like I said, you have the West Bank and Gaza right now that are supposed to be sovereign territories, right? For the
yes,
but they're not.
It is sovereign territory. It is sovereign territory, but it's under occupation.
Well, yeah, it is, but in effect, it's occupied, right? So that would, I think, would be and right now there's, the Israelis they're in Lebanon, they've got their control zones that are in Syria now, and it's expanding. They're in the West Bank right now, being disruptive with in the West Bank, and Gaza is a parking lot essentially, and they've leveled it now. There's a, we talk about two-state solution. We talk about all this. What are this? It's interesting your comments about let's see where these conversations go and the salt that the statements that the people and the countries what they're made of as a result of making these statements when it comes to the summit that happened in Egypt. Do you feel like you're any closer to, because of the active partners, because it's in the news, because it's now on everybody's desk and on everybody's mind? Now the parties, the strata where everyone is at, are you closer now to any kind? No, are you farther away?
No, I don't think that we are further. I don't think we are closer. Israel is advancing as we speak. Its destruction of the Palestinian people. There has been let me give you some example. There has been this ceasefire in Gaza. Meanwhile, over 100 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed, including children. There were mobile units, there were tents on top of all the agreed upon humanitarian aid that has been severely hampered. Only 2/3 of the trucks have entered, very limited tents, and also compared to what had been agreed upon, no mobile units. So Palestinians are really, there is nowhere to shelter themselves from the elements for many of them. First, so they continue to die. Israel has intensified its starvation campaign. So this is matter of death and life for human beings, like the Palestinians who have survived 16 months of genocidal assault. Meanwhile, in the West Bank, which has always been a prototypical incubator of a genocide in the making, because ethnic cleansing, like breaking the ties of the people from the land, is genocidal. While with my debate about legal definitions, again, if you disconnect an entire people from the land, you break them as a people. And the fact that they are resilient and they survive in exile doesn't mean that you have not committed acts of genocide. You mean that they're survivors and they're very resilient and they still will be fighting for justice. But what is happening in the West Bank as we speak is an intensification of the violence. So nothing has stopped. This is what I'm saying. We should start first and foremost by ordering and successfully managing to stop Israel from continuing to assault the Palestinians in Northwest Bank, in Southwest Bank, everywhere, destroying their homes, forcing them out. This is the reality. If we don't take a people-centered approach, we won't see what is happening to the Palestinians. So while the spotlight is on the Arab Summit discussing the future of Palestine, the reality on the ground is that the genocide or ethnic cleansing will continue undisturbed.
Right. I mean, everybody throws their hands up in the air and everybody says, well, it's just been going on for so long, it's just going to keep going on. So what interventions would work in your view?
Sanctions.
Sanctions?
Sanctions, they must be ordered and imposed, because this is the law. When you transgress, you are held accountable. And Israel has never been held accountable. So what the reality we see today is a consequence of the protracted impunity that has been granted to Israel and Israel's main allies. Because the United States have not been held accountable once either for their multiple crimes under international law. Guantanamo, last but not least, for example, or the way it has aggressed and it has assaulted other people's fundamental right to self-determination, like the Iraqi people, to mention one among many. So, this is the opportunity for a huge transition and a huge transformation in the international order. But while it's very clear where the materialistic interests of, for example, Israel and the United States are, to the detriment of their own citizens, both American and Israelis, we don't see the rest really rising up to the challenge and again imposing sanctions, activating themselves for divestment. How many private businesses are profiting from the spoils of Palestine? I'm working on it right now, and this is why I'm completely, sometimes I feel that I lack oxygen because of the deep entrenched inhumanity we have under our eyes. But also, individuals have a power to change things in civil society. In Europe, it's starting. In the US, it's starting. I want to point to the fact that actually there are Jewish people who are much more vocal, much more visible than any other religious group in the defense of Palestinians. And I do not blame Muslims, individuals, and organizations in the West, because they are strongly, and I've seen it in my own experience, and this is something that it can be traced back to the various statements I've delivered. So I know that, for example, in the West, from Australia, Canada, the US, and in Europe, there is a huge anti-Muslim, Islamophobic, and anti-Arab sentiment that is there. And therefore, it's not that Muslim people do not coalesce to defend Palestine. It's just then they are repressed themselves. However, the reason why I pointed to the Jewish people is that in the Arab region, I do not see as much movement, or in other countries, in other Muslim countries, I do not see as much movement as it should be. in order to hold their leaders accountable, for example, on the question of Palestine, or mobilizing to push back, for example, on the expansive force of Christian Zionism, which is taking the ground pretty much everywhere. So again, I think that we really need to use this opportunity to change gears, to understand who the allies are, who the common enemies are, and get together in true and full spirit of solidarity.
I appreciate that. I know we're pressed for time, so I don't want to. I know you got to. How much time do we have? Are we close? You have to go. Yeah. I think that that we have an opportunity here because it is it is a forefront. But when you talk about holding leaders accountable, particularly in the Muslim world, the agenda right now is it's tough, right? Right now, I know that the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, has said, has drawn a line, but he's obviously holding a wolf by its ears. He doesn't like it, but won't dare let it go. He's dealing with, he has ethnic Palestinians in Jordan. Egypt has closed the border, or at least has a highly secured border. The challenge is that how I'm not sure that there's any solution to the Palestinian, like a two-state solution that anyone has agreed upon. And so, but the challenge is displacing, like as a Muslim, I'm pushed back heavily when people say, well, all the other Muslim countries should take care of that, should accept Palestinians into their country. Muslims should just help these other Muslims. It's like, and I understand the difference between, it's like saying that if something happened in France, everybody should absorb the French because everybody is a Christian nation and they should just absorb the French. It's still their homeland and they should be allowed to reside and have their self-determination in their homeland. What would be a lot of these countries that surround Israel are, they've already accepted refugees, and the idea is that there's no workable solution to, at least from my perspective, there's no workable solution for a two-state solution. There's no workable solution to figure out how we would establish a Palestinian state. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Look, I don't think that the political solution is the first concern I have right now, because there is no space to really think constructively of the political solution. For 30 plus years, member states have been kicking the can in the air, reciting the two-state solution mantra, while this has served clearly as a way to allow Israel to continue to violate Palestinian rights, taking their land, their homes, their dreams, their horizons for future, and then little by little present, and now also past. Right. So Israel is really advancing the erasure of the Palestinians and the little that remains of Palestine. So it's not that the two-state solution is impossible. It should be the step zero, the square zero of any engagement. So first you realize the withdrawal of the occupation and the settlements and the control of Palestinian natural resources by Israel and others, including corporations, foreign corporations which have always been the backbone of settler colonialism, past and present. And then, of course, you can have a two-state solution by default. But we're not there. We're not there. I mean, we are not even condemning Israel as it has devastated Gaza and now pretends having the authority, moral and legal authority, to determine the future of Gaza. And while it's continuing to annex blatantly and flagrantly in violations of international law large swaths of the West Bank. So we need to, this is why I think that without insinuating that there can be real equality between the Palestinians and the Israelis in the occupied Palestinian territory, because there won't be equality unless and until also Palestinian refugees become part of the picture. and historical injustice that has been forced upon the Palestinians is resolved. However, what is to be fought for now is the full recognition and respect of Palestinian civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights, because meaning end of the apartheid, end of the persecution of a people per se. And yeah, this is what I would, and then of course, the two-state solutions would automatically happen, and then other political solutions, like for many are talking about one homeland for two people, one state, fine. But first and foremost, we need to make sure that the Palestinians are not exterminated. The Palestinians are not completely erased from the little that remains of Palestine to them. And I think that we need to wrap up because I'm already late for another interview.
Oh, that's why I wanted to. We can do a follow-up. I think it's a really interesting conversation. I hope it was for you as well. I appreciate you taking the time. It means a lot. All right. And so I'll follow up with you, and then maybe we schedule another one that's a little short. All right. I'll talk to you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All the best.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.